All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. First off, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be on this session. My name is Chris Griffith. I'm the CTO of White Label Communications. I'll be the moderator for this webinar today. Before we get started, I just want to set everything up. This is meant to be very conversational, so if anybody has questions throughout the session, feel free to raise your hand. There should be a raise hand icon on the toolbar, or go ahead and just chat a question in. We'll be monitoring that throughout. I have Steve Mayhew, who is our Director of Technical Operations on the White Label side. He's also on this call. And then we have Kevin Asano from Edgewater Networks. He's the Regional Sales Director, and also Lars Noling, who is on the engineering side. So we will go ahead and get started. So Kevin, you want to take it from here?
Well, hey, thanks so much for that introduction, Chris. And thanks for having us for this seminar series. We're definitely excited to partner with White Label on this kind of first annual, I guess, or hopefully it won't be annual, but our first product and technical series. I've been with Edgewater Networks, involved with them since 2005. And a background on me, I've been in kind of sales and technical roles for the last 20 years, mostly on the networking side, network security and real-time applications like voice and video. And just a brief introduction for Lars Noling, if you don't know him, if you haven't worked with him yet. A tremendous technical asset. He's a senior system engineer here, and he's one of those kind of rare guys that has experience from voice, data, and security standpoints. He also has 10 years of direct experience with Edgewater Networks, both as a customer and the last 3 years as a system engineer. So you're in good hands here from Edgewater, and we definitely encourage you guys to reach out and let us know how we can help you. So I'm going to advance my screens real quick to the agenda. There we go. So we should have the screen advanced there. As far as an agenda, we're going to cover what we mean by this White Label seminar series. We'll cover an introduction to Edgewater Networks. I'll give you some background about who we are if you're not familiar with us. I'll talk about different deployment methods that we've seen over the years in hosted voice primarily. And then we'll go directly into a relatively deep dive of what the Edgewater product portfolio consists of, from the EdgeMarc product that you'll become very familiar with EdgeView, which is our element management tool. And then we'll talk about SIP trunking applications. And then finally, as at the end of the series, we'll talk about, at the end of the session, we'll talk about, what you should do, in the future. I mean, are you limited to just these webinars, or how do you work with Edgewater? And as Chris was saying, we definitely want this to be interactive as possible. If you have any questions, we'll reserve some time at the end for Q&As. But if you have questions pertaining to a particular slide or something that I say, raise your hand, ask it, and I think it will make for a better session. So moving on. Let me see if I can get this thing to move forward. All right. There we go. That's a little bit of a delay before it advances the slide. What we're going to be covering. Here's a brief slide of what we're going to cover over the next kind of 4 weeks or so. But I do want to tell you why we're doing this. I mean, in general, Edgewater Networks has had great success working with wholesale, different wholesaling VoIP providers. I have examples of different companies that have wanted to branch out into the hosted PBX market, to supplement, their existing premise-based PBXs. And I've seen those companies grow from being primarily premise-based to having a business with a monthly reoccurring that's stronger than their old traditional premise-based. We've seen other companies that have focused on the SMB market. Maybe they're selling like a hosted exchange type product, and they're supplementing it. Since they already have the customers, they're supplementing that offering by offering voice services to it. So we're a huge fan of this type of business, and I think we have the right product set and tool set to help you guys be successful. Partnering directly with White Label has been great as well. I mean, they seem to have a great idea of how to run a program, how to get partners trained, and they've been very innovative and quite of a driver for Edgewater Networks. They're one of the companies that pushed Edgewater on the multi-tenant aspect of EdgeView, as a good example of how we react to our customers. And they were a big driver for that particular feature. And as we'll address later on in this slide, it's a great tool for wholesaling partners like yourself to get started quickly. So in general, as far as this seminar series, I'll cover the product introduction. Next week, Lars will go through, hey, how do I configure an EdgeMarc? He'll cover some typical things. He'll talk about how to secure the EdgeMarc, how to set up QoS, those sorts of things. The first week of January, we'll cover troubleshooting. Hey, I have a problem with voice. What do I do? What are the tools that are available within the EdgeMarc itself? And then the second week of January, we'll cover, what are some advanced tools that are available? How do we use EdgeView? And again, we'll make it interactive. It'll be very specific. And I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So let me move forward and give you a background of Edgewater Networks. We're not a household name in the terms of networking, but I think in the voice space, many of you will have heard of us. We have a very good reputation of building a solid product that helps in both hosted voice and SIP trunking. We're based here in San Jose. We're founded, we're 2002, so it's really coming along. The main products that we'll talk about will be the EdgeMarc product, but we do have other products as well. Our technology has been OEM'd by other technology companies to secure, primarily to secure other real-time applications, whether it's video or voice. We have over 200 business partners. I mean, there's a good number of service providers of ILEX, CLEX, and cable providers that use us. About approaching 300,000 EdgeMarc shipped. And when you look at this from a session standpoint, this is real close to 25% of the enterprise session border controller market. I mean, you can see a sample list of people who use the Edgewater solution. And we're really designed to solve these sorts of challenges and help make you guys successful. So traditionally there's been challenges with how to make everything work together. You end up deploying not just phones. In many cases, there's everything from a service provider to a router or a firewall that sits at the customer end. And even though everyone is designing products for SIP, it doesn't necessarily guarantee interoperability. So we help address and normalize this. Quality of service. Many of you guys will go to market and will want to do an over-the-top type solution. Well, how do you manage quality so that everyone has a good experience? We can help there. As far as troubleshooting when problems occur, I think everyone on this call can probably troubleshoot, a faulty T1 line or a PRI and quickly troubleshoot it. But what do you do when the voice and data has converged over one internet connection? What tools are available? And then finally, and it's almost like an afterthought. At least in the past, it's been very much like an afterthought. No one is thinking about security. It's, hey, how do I make all this stuff work? We're going to open these ports on the firewall, and we'll get calls to go through, and everyone will be happy until something goes wrong and someone gets hacked. So how do you enable all of these new applications, these real-time applications, and still provide for a solid security policy? And then finally, I need to be able to deploy this at the SMB all the way up to kind of mid-size to larger enterprises. How do I do this without breaking the bank and bringing trucks after trucks of equipment? So Edgewater provides a great solution here. So we'll quickly go to the different ways that we've seen different service providers offer hosted PBX. There we go. So kind of the first option that we see is, hey, I'm just going to add phones there and cross my fingers and hope everything works. There's several reasons why why you may want to do this, and then there's many reasons why you probably want to steer away from this, and it probably isn't a great fit for you. But if we look at about how we can deploy voice, you can simply configure the phones and ship them to the customer, plug everything into the customer's existing LAN, and have the customer dial away. Operationally, we've seen different service providers offer a web sign-up page where you can enter in your company information, add a credit card, and then within 5-10 minutes get an email with here's your phone number, here's the credentials, you can download a soft client. So from an operational standpoint, a lot of this can be automated, and it's great. You can get customers up very quickly. As far as building a product set, real simple to say, hey, it's all you can eat dialing, for example, for $20. And because a lot of this is getting pre-configured, or you're sending a soft phone, or you're sending a pre-configured hard phone, it's install times are as fast as the customer can install. The challenges related to this, there are several points of failure. You have the customer's infrastructure that you have to deal with. They may have a 10-year-old 10100 Ethernet switch in there. They may have bad cabling. There's a million areas where this can fail. They may have a DSL line that's just simply too slow, or a router that doesn't offer strong QoS. And then there's a whole myriad of challenges that you might have from a security standpoint. So in general, this is very well suited. This is best suited for a 4 or 5 person office where you simply can't, they can't afford your offering. My guess here, for this particular call, it's not going to be a great fit for many of the folks that are on this call. You may use this type of method for an executive that works from home, and then you're providing, something like option 2 or option 3, as I'll get into briefly, for kind of the main location. So the option 2, as we call it, is this kind of rip and replace. You may or may not be doing a site survey. You want to offer end-to-end circuits and end-to-end QoS. And to do that, you're going to upgrade their LAN infrastructure to maybe power over Ethernet switches. You're probably going to update their router to a something that's very voice savvy that can answer can address QoS and security concerns. The EdgeMarc can be part of this type of solution. The downsides to this is you're going to have multiple touches with this customer before they even start paying their bill. So you have, in some cases you're going to sell them a new circuit, and that's either your truck is coming out, or one of your partners, one of your T1 or business Ethernet partners is coming out to do that install. The phone needs to get installed, the LAN needs to get installed. That's probably your truck going out and doing the upgrade there. And this isn't cheap, and it's not trivial, because you have to get it set up properly and to avoid all sorts of issues that can happen. And by the way, when you do this approach, you do own the LAN and the WAN now. So there's higher capital costs because there tends to be more equipment that needs to be installed. This may be a great solution for the larger SMBs, but it's often too expensive for many of the other types of customers out there. But it will work well with the Edgewater solution. We can put the EdgeMarc in there. We can terminate point-to-point T1s, for instance. We can set up class of service, quality of service using an MPLS circuit if that's what gets deployed. From a cost standpoint, the CPU, you're looking at roughly $600 to $1,000 for the router. Each PoE switch maybe is $600 each, so it does add up very quickly. And we haven't even talked about the different phones out there. But for some customers and for some business models, the ability to say, hey, we're going to manage everything for you, it can be very appealing. It can be very profitable. And a nice compromise, and I think this is really well suited for the Edgewater solution, is this kind of monitor the edge or control the edge type method. The idea here is we're deploying the EdgeMarc at the edge to connect with either the customer's existing broadband connection or a new circuit that you've sold them. It connects to their existing LAN. and then SIP services from either the PBX or the phone are going back through white label. So as far as the advantages, you're still getting the ability to monitor the customer's calls and troubleshoot when needed. As we'll get into, the EdgeMarc provides very strong QoS and security features. So you have at least the edge portion covered. The downside is if the customer still has legacy Ethernet switches, you may still have problems on the LAN side. There's not much you can do there. But if you deploy this and you monitor, you can quickly determine that, hey, look, I think that 10-year-old D-Leak switch is probably causing some issues. So you can make the case to get it upgraded. You're already in, the advantage here is you're already in you're already a vendor now. And making that pitch, it gives you the opportunity to make that pitch and do the upgrade and control that portion of it where you might not have control, in the past.
Kevin, this is Chris. If I could just hijack your session for a second here. One thing I wanted to point out that can be done here, and I know that our resellers ask us this question a lot, is there's another data vendor involved, and they want their router in there and their switch and all that stuff, and it doesn't really show it in this picture, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it more in the technical sessions, but being able to split the two networks and from the EdgeMarc, that's your single point, and then you can proxy ARP through to another device. That way you can actually create the separation between the voice and the data and still do everything you need to do on the EdgeMarc side to monitor all the voice.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great point, Chris. As I talked about in the beginning, it's a multi-vendor environment from a SIP side. It definitely is from a network side. You're going to have customers that have qualified their own firewalls and they want to use them. Quite frankly, you should use them. They probably work really well for doing value-added data services, and we encourage you to do that. We have great documentation on how to make all of this stuff work and still provide for either segmentation, sending voice over one circuit and data over the other, or providing for failover. So I think it's an excellent point. The final disadvantage that we have listed here is it may be too expensive for very small customers, and this is a marketing slide, and I'm not sure if I terribly agree with this. We'll talk about the different product sets that we have here at Edgewater, and we do have, there's a 5-call box that can go down to as low as $485 MSRP. That should be, sufficient for many of the customers, even if they're, a 2 or 3 person office. Okay. So the next set is, the next part of this presentation, I want to go through specifics of what Edgewater offers and the advantages of using us, and we'll start with the, the EdgeMarc product, the product family. And actually, before I head on, any comments here? Would you guys agree in general that option 2 and option 3, either rip and replace or monitor the edge, is probably the way you guys are going to go to market? And it's just something to think about. If this is something that, if you think that there's other modes or something might be better for you, we can always bring this up in the last kind of 10 minutes of this session. So what's the EdgeMarc do, and where does it fit? This is a good overview of all of the features available on the EdgeMarc. I'll touch on each of the feature sets briefly, but the enterprise session border controller functionality of the EdgeMarc, this is kind of the bread and butter of the product family. It's something that we've been doing since the inception of the company, and we've improved it. It solves a lot of the problems that are very typical of hosted PBX or voice in general. The ESPC does the NAT fix-up component, or it opens ports on the firewall. And a lot of these feature sets, I'll be the first to admit, they can be done with other devices. You can do these on traditional routers or firewalls. And you probably have someone in your staff that knows Cisco backwards and forwards, for example, and they can open the relevant firewall ports and set it up. But the challenges here, when you look at this from a high level, is doing this on non-application specific type hardware like a traditional firewall. It's not easy, and it can be monotonous. So you're using kind of a relatively expensive and high level guy to do to do configurations, it's probably not the best use of that expert's time. With the EdgeMarc, all of this is done. Initially it can be done via GUI, so it's something very quickly to get familiar with the device, get the device qualified on your network, for example. And then later, when you've qualified it and you're happy with it, it's very easy to take a standard configuration template and push it down. So I think from anything I tell you here, it's not going to be unique to the EdgeWater solution, but I think collectively and by the way we've implemented makes it very a very good way of doing this. So the ESBC is going to handle kind of the security and that fix-up of the voice calls. We handle security, so this also means the data security. So we can be that single data firewall. It's a stateful inspection firewall. It's based on IP tables. It's qualified and used at thousands of types of customers. We also provide for site-to-site IPsec VPN tunnels. So if you have multiple locations, there's not another VPN concentrator that you need to use. We can build, the IPsec functionality directly into the EdgeMarc, reducing the number of boxes that are needed. From a voice standpoint, this is a voice-ready firewall that opens and closes ports dynamically as calls are coming up. And we're doing it in a secure fashion so that you're not opening tons of ports, and we're tracking these things. Again, that's heads back to the session border controller function. From a quality of service standpoint, I think this is probably what we're best known for. I can't tell you how many calls that we've received saying, "Hey, I hear you have a good box that does QoS," and they don't really know about all of these other things that we do. But yeah, we do provide traffic shaping in the box, so we can do this bidirectionally. If you have a link from a Comcast cable or some other broadband provider, we can control the upstream and downstream rates. If you're doing something like MPLS, we can do DSCP, or we can mark up to 8 classes of service. So we can help with QoS on a managed network as well. Where you guys will grow to love us, I'm guessing, is going to be on these next series of feature sets. The network monitoring functionality and troubleshooting functionality. These are often converged networks, not always, but often. How do you what do you do when something goes south? How do you tell where the problem is? Is it a customer's LAN that's causing the issue? Is it your service provider that's not terminating SIP properly? Is it the WAN link that has has faults on it? Each EdgeMarc ships with this call quality monitoring tool. It can be used for troubleshooting. You can do TCP dump to grab SIP captures, all integrated without having to roll a truck. There's test tools that you can use to do automated calls when you're first bringing a customer up to verify that, hey, this call would work, and you don't even have to wait for the phones to get deployed. Other feature sets of the product, we have local survivability and a PSTN survivability built into some models of the EdgeMarc. So that if you have, traditionally, if you have a problem on your WAN and you can't reach the SAW switch, all of your phones are dead. With local survivability, this can be effective in a school campus or any larger type of building where you need to call between buildings, for example, or call between stations. It still survives. The EdgeMarc monitors the SAW switch and brings up a survivable. Basically a survivable phone system when it senses it's down. There's EdgeMarcs out here that I'll go into when I cover the next slide that have FXS ports and FXO ports built into it. And then finally, we help automate the configuration of the devices behind us. So, phone setup is a big deal when you have a customer that has 20 phones, or you have several customers that has 20 or 40 or 50 phones out there. We have a feature with EdgeView that's called plug and dial that can help. But we also have, we also have voice-specific DHCP codes like option 66 that will tell the phone where to get its configuration file. So you don't have to have a separate DHCP server. You don't have to program the phones with before they get shipped out. We can help there if that's of interest. So moving on to so what do each of these look like? We have a pretty wide product line even on the EdgeMarc side. It scales from the very low end up to the largest enterprises that require high availability features like redundant power supplies or redundant WAN links. The beauty here is the user interface is consistent all the way across the family line, and I think you're going to see that that's relatively unique to the Edgewater family. A lot of products are developed, like a lot of competing products are developed or they're acquired and set up on one may be different than set up on another, or the feature set is so different that the GUI has to change, for example. That's something that's very unique to Edgewater and very helpful to different service providers out there. You can learn how to configure our bread and butter product, the EdgeMarc 4550, and still be able to configure the EdgeMarc 7301 for a larger opportunity. So individually, let's go through these product sets. The EdgeMarc 250AE is targeted for the very small office. It has a lot of features packed into one small box. There's 4 FXS ports. There's a single FXO port for failover. There's an ADSL router built into it. There's an Ethernet WAN to connect to, say, a cable connection. And then there's 8 gigabit Ethernet ports on the LAN side. Sounds great. This product is specifically targeted for the very small office. It will support up to 10 calls. We do have a low entry price at 2 concurrent calls. So if you have a single user office, this would be one option. The internet throughput on this is really limited to about 10 megabits per second bidirectional. You don't want to deploy this on, some of these cable connections are coming out are 20, 30, 50 megabits per second down, and that will, you're not going to get the internet performance that the customer may want by deploying this. But it is a nice form factor, and it's all-in-one design for many customers. The bread and butter type solution that we offer here is the EdgeMarc 4550 series. The basic configuration is Ethernet on the WAN side, Ethernet on the WAN side and Ethernet on the LAN side. It scales from 5 concurrent calls all the way up to 70 or so. And the internet performance is in that 30 to 35 megabits per second bidirectional rate. Other members of this family, there's the EdgeMarc 4552. So if you have, if you still deploy T1s, there's a built-in T1 router functionality. So we'll ship the box with up to 4 T1s built into it. You can bomb these. You can use, similar to what Chris alluded to, is there's this WAN link redundancy feature so that you can have, a T1 that's dedicated for voice and the Ethernet is dedicated for internet. And then fail over between the two, so giving the customer a high uptime, high availability. The other product members in this family are the 4570 and 4571. The 4570 is just like the EdgeMarc 4550, but we've added an 8-port IAD capability into it. I think if you have a customer that you can't talk into moving to hosted PBX, because they still like their key system, you may want to sell them SIP trunks. Terminating those FXOs from the PBX to the FXS to the 4570 would be one way of doing it. Now you're providing SIP signaling to that older legacy key system. And then the 4571 is similar to the 4552, except that we add 6 FXS and 2 FXO. This is of interest for customers that are hospitals, schools, folks that need to have redundant PSTN backup built in. Like I said, the EdgeMarc 4550 has been our workhorse. We do have the EdgeMarc 4601. It's primarily used for PRI. So again, you have these legacy PBX customers that they're not ready to upgrade their PBX to be IP capable. They're not willing to move to hosted for one reason or another. They love their PBX. You can put the EdgeMarc 4601 and connect up to 2 PRIs to that legacy PBX and send SIP trunk traffic to it. What I think will be the bread and butter product for 2015 is the EdgeMarc 4750. This is our second device that has redundant Ethernet connections built into the box. The EdgeMarc 4750, we've tested the spec for building this product was 100 meg up internet performance, 100 meg down internet performance, and 100 calls all simultaneous. While we're doing functions like QoS and the SBC function, while we're monitoring the calls that go through the box. So it's a very sturdy, solid product family that's in the form factor of that's suitable for the SMB. With performance that can, with 100 calls, you're starting to look at some larger, some good-sized companies, the upper end of the SMB. We do have a product that is going to fit also in about the 100 megabits per second performance. That will be a reduced cost version of it that will handle maybe 30 to 50 concurrent calls. And that's the 4700, and that's coming out early next year. We'll talk about in the next couple of slides. And then finally, for larger enterprises or call centers, the EdgeMarc 7301, the EdgeMarc 7400, these are one-use server-style boxes. Internet throughput is, it's full line rate gigabit Ethernet. I think we're talking several hundred megabits per second of internet throughput for these types of devices. They scale up to 1,000 concurrent calls for the 7301, up to 2,000 concurrent calls for the 7400. The 7400 has redundant power supplies. But again, consistent GUI across the platform, consistent feature sets. Questions so far? Comments?
Everyone, don't be shy. If you have any questions, there's a little raise hand button. If you click that, we'll unmute you, ask your question to the group, or simply chat your question in, and one of us will divvy it up and hand it out.
Right. And just in summary, so this is what I think the main focus for 2015 will be for most of the folks on this call. At the low end, the EdgeMarc 250 for these very small customers summarizes 10 meg, 10 sessions. The 4550, 70 to 90 sessions. Performance is actually 30 megabits per second. 4700 series, with this 4750 being the higher end version of it, up to 100 sessions, dual WAN built in, and then the 7301 with dual WAN built in, and full gig speeds and up to 2,000 sessions. All of these will be managed via EdgeView, and I'll talk about that in the coming slides. I think it's the next slide, actually. So EdgeView Virtual Appliance is our element management tool. I mean, it's really a differentiator here. There's boxes out there, and you can get MOS scores from phones nowadays, and there's other devices that will provide MOS scores, but there's nothing. We are a leader in this space. I think we are the leader in this space in terms of the thoroughness and the breadth of the management product. This product today ships as a virtual appliance, so if you guys are running VMware, this is something that you can deploy. White label, as I mentioned earlier, they have and grant access to a tenant on their EVA system, and thereby lowers the commitment that you need to make. You can traditionally when we sold these things as appliances, many folks would wait for 20 customers to get up and running or so, and then they would consider doing EdgeView. With EVA and with the multi-tenancy of it, you can start at day one and really offer a managed service from day one versus waiting to have a critical mass to be able to fund it. So I think this is just a great tool. How it works is we monitor several points in the network. We're going to monitor the WAN side of the EdgeMarc, the LAN side of the EdgeMarc. We can capture MOS scoring information from phones on the network, and then we pull those all back into EdgeView and give you, kind of a bird's eye view of that EdgeMarc. You can see in this, in a bit of a eye chart here, but you can see that, we're able to get not only the MOS score and rank them from, poor calls to good calls, but also all the factors that are causing that low MOS score. We get, for every single call, we do give you both the local side of the call as well as the WAN side of the call, so you can see both sides of it and determine quickly, hey, is this my problem or is this probably a customer? Is this the customer's LAN problem? Ultimately, they all roll out to be our problem, right? And we have, because we wanted to get them up and running quickly. Being able to triage these customers and determine where the fault lies is crucial. You're able to sort based on MOS score or source or destination. We often hyperlink common problems. In this example, it's a jitter issue. So that you might have a tech support team that is tiered, where you have tier 1 support that's made up of less experienced members, and then you might have your experts backing them up. This sort of tool allows getting captures, getting SIP signaling captures by tier 1, getting commonly known problems resolved quicker, and then escalating up as needed. So it's a great support model. It's a great way, a great tool that will help ease those sorts of issues.
One thing, if I could add to this as well, we've been running the Edgewater now or the EdgeView rather, for almost 5 years, and I know every single one of you have been in the position where someone dropped a call. It was last week. It doesn't happen that often, but maybe once or twice a month something funky is going on. This gives us the ability to look back in time. As you know, the EdgeMarcs only have so much memory in them, and when they reboot, they lose all their logging. So it's very difficult to go back and find what happened back when this problem occurred. So the EdgeView gives us the ability to trend certain behaviors that are sporadic. They don't happen enough that we can reproduce it and quickly be able to troubleshoot a problem. The EdgeView will give us that visibility, and we can do the capturing that we need to really go back. So when your customer has that problem again, we were already capturing it, we were already looking for it, and we know where to troubleshoot now. It's very difficult for us at White Label to help you as our reseller when you don't have an example, or maybe you do have an example, but we don't have any of the data to come along with that, and we basically have to say, okay, we'll set up your capture, and when it happens again, then we'll look. The EdgeView will give us the ability to go back and start troubleshooting right away instead of trying to reproduce or wait for the instance to occur again. So you'll have one case like that you solve, and it's worth its weight in gold all day long.
That's a great example. I mean, it is truly a great example, and we have a number of cases, in our TAC where, these were true VoIP issues, meaning there's a problem with a service provider. And we have also solved issues where there's a PC that's running a virus that's taking up all the bandwidth, causing issues on the LAN side, or causing issues with quality. We've had we spotted bad cabling, for example. So we can really pinpoint to Chris's point. And it's crucial for these kind of lingering problems, or these problems that don't happen all the time. So, up to now, we've primarily talked about hosted PBX. We're also, the same product set can be used for SIP trunking. And there's lots of reasons for doing this. If you look at SIP trunking, every PBX vendor has their own kind of thoughts on how it should be done. Some say you don't need an enterprise session border controller. We can handle the NAT on our side. There's lots of different ways of doing it. We think this works well. There's one type of device. This is going to be the same device I use for hosted, and it can support different types of PBXs. So whether it's old PRI or an analog key system or the latest IP PBX, we can handle it with the EdgeMarc family. The one thing that's often overlooked is security. Security to some folks means a strong user password on the endpoint or on the trunk. I don't know if that qualifies for security. So with the Edgewater, with the EdgeMarc solution, we're offering the NAT fix-up. We're SIP aware. We can lock this down so that you're only allowing SIP traffic from white label, for example. You may offer different types of PBXs, or you may sell to customers that have a wide variety of PBXs installed. You don't want to have a configuration for every vendor that's out there, and the EdgeMarc can help with this. We can help give you this standard platform that you're programming to the EdgeMarc, and then we're doing fix-up to the actual PBX side. If you are selling outside, if you're selling SIP trunking to customers that don't use you for the premise-based PBX, which may be one strategy, you may not have access to the PBX, and the customer may not have an administrator to make changes. With the EdgeMarc, we can do some protocol mediation where we add or remove plus signs from a SIP trunk, or there's a number of things that we can do from that standpoint without even having to make any changes on the PBX, and that will save time and help the customer get up and running and start billing them sooner. The same QoS functionality helps with providing a quality experience on a converged line or on a separate line, or in an over-the-top type scenario. And then you can set call admission controller CAC to control how many calls are going at once. And the same sort of troubleshooting features that we talked about in hosted PBX can be implemented in SIP trunking. The biggest challenge about SIP trunking is nice. You can sell these circuits. It's usually less issues once they're up and running than hosted PBX. There's kind of less moving parts. But the challenges up front are, hey, how do I don't know Avaya, or I'm a Panasonic dealer, or I don't know how to connect to this old legacy Nortel BCM50. What do I do? So Edgewater offers Quick Connect. And what that is certification back to white label, to the white label infrastructure. We have about 40 PBXs in our lab that we actively test with. What we provide is a test plan that goes through a number of steps, as well as documentation of the results and configuration guides. So now suddenly, if you know that NEC is big in your marketplace and you want to target those customers for SIP trunking, you might consider using Quick Connect to certify one or two models of NEC, for example, and have a configuration guide that goes through and will help your team not only configure the EdgeMarc, but set up the PBX side properly, or provide guidance to the customer on how to set up their PBX properly, so that, again, you get them up and running quickly. So we're coming towards the end of this of our time, and I want to leave the opportunity for questions at the end. But I also want to make sure that you guys understand this isn't the only method that we, these types of seminars aren't the only method that we need to communicate. We'll do a follow-up email through our marketing team with contact information for us. We'll add the commonly asked questions about, what do I do for support? How do I get, how do I do case management and so forth? Where do I buy this stuff from? We can, we'll do the traditional follow-up, but I want to encourage you guys to also reach out to us directly. If you have questions about, hey, what EdgeMarc should I use for this type of deployment? Or, we have a big install coming up that involves multiple locations. It's our first time. How do we do specific training? We can help you there. So, we'll give you the guidance here, but I do also want to put it back to you that, feel free to reach out and contact us and let us know how we can help you there. It looks like we had a couple of questions pop up, and I'm not sure how long they've been sitting there.
I think Lars and I think we're chipping away at some of the questions that are coming up in chat.
Oh, you are? Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay. So, Chris, do we want to open it up for question and answer right now?
Yeah. If anyone has a specific question, just raise your hand here and we'll unmute you. Right now I see Tony. Let me unmute you, Tony. All
Hey.
right. Tony?
Yes.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Actually, a quick question. Regarding the EdgeMarc 4570. Usually now, when we have a client with a legacy PBX that doesn't take SIP chunks, we deploy a Cisco gateway as well as an EdgeMarc. So the 4570, will that do away with that now? I don't have to deploy a gateway; just use the EdgeMarc. I'm sorry.
So what is a gateway? Like, what is it? A PRI gateway? Is it a FXS type of device?
Yeah. So in other words, it'll take the SIP trunk and pass off POTS lines to the PBX. So it comes in digitally, but comes out analog.
Okay. So something like depending on the customer size and what kind of the ports are on the PBX, you could use something like the 4570. That has 8 FXS ports.
Right, that's what I was looking for, the 4570.
Yeah. I mean, that would work really well. I'm not sure if it's always the same PBX for you, or if there's, if it varies. But I always thought go ahead.
We always come across the partner systems, Panasonic, Via, that don't have the ability to do the SIP trunk.
Yeah.
And we've been deploying that Cisco gateway to get that ability to go from digital to. We've also found out that it's almost impossible to deploy that without an EdgeMarc because they have the same problems as.
Yeah.
At that point, it's just another endpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have QoS issues. You could have firewall issues.
Right.
And
once we deploy that EdgeMarc,
you're eventually going to get hacked,
everything goes away. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Perfect example. So the 4570 would be perfect for that.
Right. This would eliminate us having to sell 2 pieces of equipment as opposed to just using the 4571. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Tony.
So other questions that came through chat, I don't know if you guys handled it, but it's probably good for the whole team. Let me go back to, okay, I'm on the right slide. So we have, this idea of call sessions and we license our box based on call sessions. I probably should clarify that. If you look at an EdgeMarc 4550, you can buy this box as a 5-call device, and you can grow it all the way up to 70 calls. In real-time use, that's done infrequently. Usually the customer buys, say 15 calls, and they stay at 15 calls. They don't grow past it. But you have the ability to grow that device to 30 calls or to 50 calls or to 70. And we do that via license key. You don't have to swap hardware out. We can get, you can work with one of our distribution partners. They can generate the license key and email it to you. You can remote log into the EdgeMarc and change the license key, and then boom, now you have a device that can support more sessions. It adds a little complexity because now you have 5 or 6 models of the 4550 and which one's right for you. But it also has a ton of flexibility. Now you have one product that is affordable to smaller customers. That can grow up to, as the customer grows, or you can, use that for customers that need more concurrent calls. So I hope that's a good description of how we license based on SIP calls, and and why we do it. More importantly, it gives you the ability to get, with voice, you're going to see, especially with these multi-site deals, there's going to be big locations and small locations. If you have problems on the little locations where there's just 3 or 4 people and you can't solve them quickly, you're still going to lose that account eventually. And that means you're going to lose. They're not just going to fire you for the small location. They're going to fire you for the whole network, right? This is converged, unified meaning the entire company communication. So that's an important point to stress. Any other questions out there?
I'm just gonna read one here from Marcelo. He said earlier you mentioned doing VoIP testing via the EdgeMarc. Maybe you could just touch on that again quickly.
Sure. Hey Lars, do you want to chime in here and kind of give a 2-minute overview of what that means?
Yeah, sure. This combines 2 features. So the first one is the call quality scores. We give you MOS scores on every call. So we tell you, is there packet loss inside the network or outside the network? So you can make calls to your VoIP phones, but let's say it's the middle of the night or it's even before deployment. The test user agent on the EdgeMarc can be a virtual phone. So you can take the SIP credentials from a phone, the SIP username and password, and assign that to the test user agent in the EdgeMarc and enable that. The test user agent registers with the white label soft switch and will answer calls. So then you can call that extension, it will answer and beep at you. It just generates like a test tone, and then you can go back and look at those scores and see if there was any packet loss or jitter. So if you had issues with the circuit and the carrier, Comcast, or whoever says they fixed it, you can make test calls and verify that things are clean without having to have an end user on site to answer their phone.
Yeah, it's always awkward, right? Having, hey, can you pick up the phone for a second and count backwards from 10?
And guys, that's another great thing that you can do prior to deploying anything. So you can get your EdgeMarc online and on site, before the port, before you do the install, and you can run all of those tests. I mean, anybody can do a ping test and a bandwidth test and all those things in advance, but once those numbers port and those phones are ringing through, you need to know for sure that everything is set up correctly and that network connection is going to be good. And you can even check with us if you let us know that device is online. We'll do like a 24-hour MTR on it and simulate an 80K call, 160, a couple paths, all the way through, and then just look for packet loss over a 24-hour period. And we're happy to do that well in advance of your install, just if you need confirmation on an internet connection that you're just not sure about.
And then Jason had a question I don't think we got to. He wanted a little more detail on the 4601 for SIP to PRI. So
Sure.
The 4601 would come into play if your customer has a legacy PRI PBX. You can come in and disconnect their AT&T or legacy provider's PRI and plug it into the EdgeMarc and get all your dial tone from white label. So it's a combination of the EdgeMarc session border controller and a SIP PRI gateway all in one box. And you can do up to 2 PRIs for that connection. So the EdgeMarc actually has 4 physical T1 ports, but only 2 of them can be a PRI. And those PRI ports are licensed. So there's a 10-call single PRI version license is where it starts, and you can do 23 calls, or you can do all the way up to 2 PRIs.
Yeah, I mean, again, this flexibility where, and you might have the customer that it's a transition. They're going to use their PBX and they're going to migrate slowly to hosted, for example. In this example, you might have just a single PRI going to the customer's PBX, and they're not using all their full PRI. They don't need the full 23 channels, for example. You can use the call licenses for IP or for kind of the legacy PRI. So some customers can be on a hosted PBX platform, getting their calls monitored, and other people stay on the legacy, the PBX. So a lot of flexibility here. And it really opens, kind of deployment methods up to, up for that customer. All right, any other questions?
Virgil had a question about creating reports in EdgeView. And there is a separate EdgeView report product that White Label doesn't currently have available. We don't really have that set up for multi-tenant kind of sharing. You can do some downloads of the data from EdgeView, so you can download the call quality scores and stuff in CSVs and maybe do some report generation in Excel or something like that. But you don't have a complete access to reporting tools, but that might be something we can add down the road.
All right, any other questions that anyone has today? We have from Jason Smith, how much is EdgeView? We can talk about that offline. So what we do is we don't charge you at all for the EdgeView tenant license, so you get that for free. And then what White Label would charge just a management fee, which I believe, depending on where you are in your contract, either $4 or $5 per EdgeMarc per month. So, and we cover all the support costs, the management, and the upkeep of the device. And we can get you more information on that. I'll send something out for anybody that doesn't have EdgeView now. And I just want to ask the group one other question. Is there anyone on this call today that has not worked with Edgewater before or hasn't used an Edgewater device? If you're one of those people, maybe just chat in the window and say yes. We would like to get you more information and maybe some more one-on-one calls with Edgewater and with ourselves so we can properly introduce you to the product and maybe help you with one of your first installs that you have coming up. All right, I see a bunch of you chiming in here, so thank you for that.
Awesome.
And there was a question that came up earlier about this session. This is being recorded, this session, and we'll be publishing this to White Label University shortly once we have everything ready to go. And you'll also receive an email with that from us, so you'll be able to link right to that. So I really want to thank Kevin and Lars being available today to talk to everybody. Thank you guys. You both did a fantastic job on this call. And I'd like to encourage everybody to join in and register for the upcoming sessions we have. I know next week's a crazy week with holidays coming up. We have December 23rd. We're going to do a 1 p.m. Eastern session, which is going to be a technical overall administration. And then we're going to jump into Tuesday, January 6th, which is going to be an EdgeMarc troubleshooting, not only EdgeMarc, but VoIP troubleshooting. That's going to be a great session. And also on the 13th, which is a week later, all the advanced stuff. So we'd really like that to open that up and get you guys involved and ask the questions that you have related to VoIP troubleshooting so we can answer them for you. And again, all of these sessions will be recorded. They'll all be made available to you guys so you can forward them to your peers internally if they weren't able to make this call for whatever reason. And again, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your schedules to join us today with this call, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next sessions.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, guys, everyone have a great day, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks.